Hello guys, in this video, this is part 2 of our Tlog Express application. In part 1, we left our application here where the server is able to, where the client page is able to send data to the server. But in this tutorial, we're going to be looking at sending data from server to the client, making dynamic forms in JavaScript and submitting them, and playing around with the HTML5 geolocation feature. Now, you can see that we talked about sending this data, sending this value to the server. But what if I want to render another page? What do I do? Well, this is where we're going to use view engines. Now, if you remember in the last video, we talked about view engines. Yeah, so we're going to use view engines here. Now, first things first, before we start with this video, I just want you to go ahead and install some dependencies. So npm install, we're going to need nodemon because we're going to be frequently making changes to the server.js file. We don't want to rerun the server each and every time we do that. I'm not going to install them because I already installed them, but you guys can just go ahead and run this comments and install the dependencies. And then the next thing you have to install is EJS. Now, this is part of the view engine. It actually is the view engine that we're going to be using. There are other kinds of view engines like Pug and whatever. I only know how to use EJS, so we're going to use EJS. And after you have installed these dependencies, you can just go ahead and run the server using nodemon server. Then when the server is running in nodemon, even when you update the server.js file, you don't have to come here and rerun the server. It will just restart itself. Okay, so before we start, we just have to config the view engine. So we config the view engine. I'm going to say app.set. We want to set the views to path.join views. Another thing we want to do is app.set. We also want to set the view engine that we're going to be using, because there are a lot of view engines. You have to specify which one you're going to use. So we are going to use EJS. Now, what is a view engine? Well, to put it in simpler terms, view engine is an engine that allows us to make simple communication between the server and the client. So when you're using a view engine, you can easily send data from the server to the client, and you can easily render pages using the engine. For instance, let's say after we display the name of the user, we want to render that other page. So after we render the log page, so when we want to render the log page here, we just have to do a few things. Because we are using view engine, we have to change this HTML document to be in EJS. We have to change them to be in EJS. You only change the extensions, you don't change the names. Well, after you have changed them to EJS, if you go and try to run the server, it will give you an error. It will give you something like, well, okay, we're having an error in here. It says app.set views path. Oh, this is supposed to be join. Okay, where is it? Here. It's supposed to be join. Sorry. Now, if you rerun the server, Node-man will rerun the server. All you have to do is come back to this page. Okay, we're still having an error. Path.join is not a function. We're still on that. Okay, there it is. So if you, it will give you this error. It says cannot get this route. So basically what we have to do, every time you're using a view engine, you have to specify the routes. Always you have to specify the routes. You have to specify that when the route is at logged, which page should be rendered. When the route is here, which page should be rendered. Because there are no HTML files anymore, when you're using express.static, it mostly, what it does, it just comes here and looks for a HTML file, but there's no HTML file anymore. So that is why it's giving us an error. What we have to do is to use express router because we want to manage the routes. So router is equals to be express dot route, and then after you decline that, you have to allow your app to use it. So app.use router. So when we get this route, we start using router, and you want to specify app.get. When we get this route, we want to render a certain page. Request a response, and we just say res.render index. So here what's happening is that index is the name of the file, index, and we don't have to specify that this is .ejs file. It already knows that we're using EJS, so it will just automatically render index. So this is how you render pages in when you're using View Engine. So now if we come here and reload the server, it will give us the page that we want to render. So what happens when you click this button, it will display the name. For instance, if I say I'm Lenny and I click this button, it still works the same way. It will put out my name there. But what if I want to render the other page when I click this button? Well, I just do the very same method. If I want to render the same page, another page, I just say res.render, and then I just put in the name of the page. So I say log, and I'll just save that. So now if I cancel this and I reload the page, I get that. If I say I'm Joy and I say next, okay, something is wrong here. There it is. So now it works fine. If we start all over, if I say I'm Lenny, it will render this page. Now, what do we have to do now? Well, we said we want to do data transfer from the server to the client. Now, how do we do that? Okay, this is very simple. First of all, the name the name of the user, where's the name? This name, it's already inside of server. So let's say when we render this page, we want the name to appear somewhere here in the middle. So this name is going to come from the server. Well, what we have to do is that we have to declare this name as a global variable. So here, this is a local variable. Just have to make it global. For name, and I just put nothing. Now, the reason I make it global is because I want this variable I want each and every function to be able to access this variable. Every function after this, I want it to be able to access this variable. And here, we want to pass in the name, but we don't want to pass the name as the name, because then we will have the same name. It will be name. We want to pass the name as the user, and the user will have name. So since we are passing the user, if we want to display this name, remember we are rendering the page log, so we go to log.ejs, and we want to display the name here under where it says username here. So you just do this. This is how we display data from the server on the client, and then you just say user, and then you close it. This way, let me show you what will happen if we do it like that. If I say I'm Lenny, next, it will write my name there. This name does not come from the client page, it comes directly from the server. So what happens is that the server takes the name from the first page and stores it, and then displays the name on the second page. Okay, what if I want to put style on this name? Like, what if I want it to be in H1 or H2, or to have a bigger font, or style it? Well, you just put the name inside each text, and we want the name to be in the middle, so we will give it a style equals text line of center. And right now, if we start all over and I say joy, it will put joy right there in the middle. Well, that's the simplest way to do data transfer from the server to the client. Now we are going to play around with the HTML5 feature. Well, the HTML5 feature, we are still going to code in the client page. We're going to put the code here inside the script tag because we're going to be using pure JavaScript. Yeah, going to be using pure JavaScript. Remember, this is not in the server, this is in the client page. So first of all, we create a function called getLocation, and most of the time I forget to run this function, so I'm just going to go ahead and run it here. Exactly when the page is loaded, we want the function to run. Now what happens in the function is that we're going to check for access. When we check for access, we check if whether the user has enabled location on the page or allows us to access his location. So if navigation dot geolocation, navigator, I'm sorry, it's supposed to be navigator dot geolocation. So if the user allows us access, we are going to say navigator dot geolocation dot get current position, and then we're going to put a function called show position. Now, else, if the user does not allow us access, we will just console.log on the client page. Console.log user declines access. And now we just have to define this function. This is a function, so we just have to define it. So function show position. We want the function to take in the position, and since the function is taking in the position, we want to grab that position. So the position of the user, this is, by the way, when we say position, we mean the coordinates of where the user is. So we're going to have position dot coords latitude plus, we're going to separate them by a comma. We have position dot coords latitude. Okay, now if we display the results console.log pause, we just want to display the user's location on the client console. So right now, if I okay, let me just rerun the server. Okay, if I say I am Joy, because I already allowed my page to track my location, you guys should be seeing something that says allow your page to track your location. Please just click OK. If you click cancel, nothing will happen. We will not be able to move forward. I already allowed my page to access my location. So if I go to my client console, my page console, I should see my coordinates up there. So these are my location coordinates. And if I, okay, these are my location coordinates. Now, how do we take these location coordinates and send them to the server? Well, this is where dynamic forms come in. Because if you remember in the part 1, we were able to send data from the client page to the server because we were using forms. We were able to use the method of post and the actions and the name and stuff. But in this, but when we're using JavaScript, we can't use forms. We don't have forms. So how are we going to do this? Well, we can still use forms in JavaScript. We're going to create dynamic forms. So here we are creating a dynamic form. So we're going to say var form equals to document dot create element. We want the element to be form. So we're just creating a form on the fly here. We're doing things that the user will not be able to see. Now we want the form to have a method of post. We want the form to have an action of location sent. And another thing, okay, we are done with the form for now. Now, inside the form, there has to be an input, as you can see right here. And the input has to have a name and a value that we want to pass. So, okay, sorry. So here, we are making a dynamic input So just do it again. So var input is equals to document dot create element, create element called input. We want our input to be of type text. We want our input to have a name that is equals to coords, because we are going to be sending coordinates, and we want our input dot value to be the pos. Okay, this is fun. Making parents. Okay, so now in our index.html file, you can see that the input is inside of form, which means the form is the parent of the input and the input is the child of the form. Now the form is inside body, which means form is a child of body and body is the parent of the form, and the document body is inside document, as you can see. So this is how parents work. That is why I said to do this course you need to know JavaScript. Now we just use the very same idea. So we will start by saying form dot append child of input. So we want form to have a child of input, which means input is inside of form. We put the input inside form. And another thing, we want to put the form inside the body. So document dot body dot append child form. So now we put the form inside of the document. Submitting the form. Well, if you don't do this step, you will not be able to submit the form. It will give you an error telling you that the form is not connected or something. So you have to do it. Now, when you submit the form, you just say form dot submit. Now, I'm going to show you an error that will happen. So right now, if we start all over and I say I'm Joy, let me just take this off. And I say okay, it will say cannot post location sent. Now, why can't it post to this location? Well, it's because this location does not exist inside of our server. So if we go to the server, we have the post of logged, but we don't have the post of location sent. So we just have to do it inside the server. So just do the very same thing. So, but instead of using router, because the router module is used to route for routes, actually, for these things, which means we no longer have to use app, we have to use router to be more specific. So we're going to change each and every app and call it router. Well, still, if you use app, you're not going to get an error, but it makes more sense to use router. From here upwards, you can use app, you have to use app, but after this statement, everything that comes after that deals with routing, you have to use router. So we're using router.post. We are posting on location sent. Then we have request and response. and then we just have to take in the user coordinates. What am I doing? Coords is equals to request.body dot. Remember the name of the input is coords. And then another thing that we have to do is to paste those coordinates on the server console. So just post coords, and then you save. Well, if we do it this way, remember on this part, oh, I forgot this. On this routing system, we did not specify what the server should do after it posts this coordinates, so it will just load forever, just like in part 1 what we were having. So if I start all over, I say I'm learning, well, it will just load forever, just like in part 1. But if I go to my server, I will see my coordinates being logged to the server, which means we were able to successfully send our location to the server. Well, but there's another problem. Another problem is that we created a dynamic form. Well, we did not say that the form must not be visible. Yes, the form is created in JavaScript, but the form will be on the screen, somewhere here. The form is here because we created it, we appended it, basically it exists. So we have to fool the user to not know that the form is here. You just go to back to your log.ejs. Here, after you have appended the form, you just make the form to be invisible, making the form invisible. So you just say form dot style dot display equals none. And then you're done. The form will not be displayed on the screen anymore. If you start all over, the server is giving me problems again. The form is not there. The form is no longer there. So therefore, everything is fine. Okay, another thing. We can see that after we send the data here, we don't do anything. Okay, let's say we want to render the very same page. Let's say we want it to come to this page, but with a message that says your location has been sent to the server. Well, how do we do that? If we just say rest.render the page, which means it will just keep rendering the page, it will just be some sort of infinite loop, because every time it renders the page, it undergoes the very same process of sending the coordinates to the server and then rendering the page again, if you understand what I'm saying. I know I cannot explain this better, but I think you get where I'm going with this. So what we do to put this video more simple, you just create another EJS file. We call it final. You can just call it final.ejs. And then you go to log.ejs and then you copy every code that is inside of log. And then you just paste it in final. After you paste this code, you remove every JavaScript code that is in the script tag. And then here you're still going to have the user, which is fine. You just leave everything the way it is because you want to render the same page. And then you go to your server, and then under this you say rendering final page, and you just say res.render. You want to render final, and you also want to send data with final. You want to send the user to be the name, and you also want to send the message that says location assigned to server successfully. Don't know if that's the right spelling. Well, we have our message. Now if I go to final, remember, if I want to display the message, I will have to display it somewhere here. Message from the server. So you just display the message there, and inside of this you just put these, and I say message, and I just close that. Now I should be able to see the message. So if I come here and say Lenny, now it says location sent to server successfully. And if I go to the server, I will see my name and my location. So that's it, guys. This is part 2. We were making data transfer from the server to client using AJS engine. This is how we did. We displayed the message, we displayed the name, and we also made dynamic forms to send out the user's location. This is how we made the dynamic forms starting from here. And we were also able to get the user's location using the HTML5 geolocation feature, which is basically what we did here and here. Not confusing, very easy, very easy. So that's it, guys. Please, if you want to see more videos, subscribe. Remember to turn on your notifications, and leave a comment below if you got lost and you want clarity on something, or you want us to add in new features. You can just leave a comment as well, and we will see what we can do. So thank you, guys.